Welcome back to the weekly Xbox Indies, your source for Xbox indie game reviews.
Yay!
Explosionade is the third game from Mommy's Best Games, and might be their most controlled and focused game yet. Both Weapon of Choice and Shoot One Up had a massive sense of scale, whereas Explosionade focuses on combat in small enclosed rooms. This actually works in the game's favor, because by keeping the action in a focused area, more attention was given to balancing each weapon and tool at your disposal. You control a mech suit through a series of challenge rooms filled with aliens, gold, and destructible walls. To help you with those destructible walls, your mech's primary weapon is a grenade launcher that can fire either sticky or bouncing grenades, depending on whether you tap or hold the right trigger. In addition to the versatile grenade types, you have a machine gun assigned to the right analog stick, and a temporary shield that can protect you from enemy fire. And while the grenades are a lot of fun, it's the shield that steals the show in the end. Not only does it block enemy fire, but you can use it to bounce, either to reach higher ledges or just to bounce on an alien's head. Making defensive tools just as fun as offensive ones seems to be a common trait in Mommy's Best Games, and Explosionade continues in that tradition. There's a very tongue-in-cheek story tying the game's 40 levels together, and a customizable difficulty right down to the game's speed. If you like action games, then download Explosionade right now. Coral's Curse plays like no other game I've ever seen. The story goes that you're a mage whose spell backfired, turning you into a half-snake creature. You control the head and torso with the left stick, while the tail is controlled with the right stick. It takes a while to get used to, but once you do, it's actually a remarkably intuitive control scheme. With it, you can perform actions like balancing on the tip of your tail to reach higher platforms, or grabbing onto ledges with your tail to use them as pivot points. The game is very exploration-based, as you'll spend much of your time sliding through underground caverns and flooded tunnels looking for keys to unlock the next area and amulets to progress. It's very hard to get lost though, thanks to a map on the pause screen that highlights your next objective. To defend yourself against enemies, you can cast both fireballs and ice attacks, both of which are effective against different enemies. For example, some enemies can only be killed by freezing them first, then attacking with a fireball. I probably should put this game in the A category because the controls certainly aren't for everybody, but I just love how it all comes together too much to give it anything but my highest recommendation. I'll admit that I had pretty low expectations for Excruciating Guitar Voyage. Maybe it was the cutout photographs for Head's art style, or the plot concept that's basically ripped right from Brutal Legend. But this is one of those wonderful cases where my instincts were completely wrong, because Excruciating Guitar Voyage is actually a surprisingly good adventure game. On your journey to restore metal music to the world, you'll pick up items, talk to a range of fully voiced characters, and solve puzzles that cause horrible bodily harm to your character. Don't worry though, it appears he's immortal somehow. Puzzles revolve around either electrocuting or setting your character on fire, and using those elements in the environment to open doors or burn obstacles. Between this and Clover: A Curious Tale, classic adventure games seem to be getting a resurgence through Xbox indie games. And if the games continue to be this good, I say the more the merrier. Don't let the silly title and terrible cover art fool you. You Want Cookie is a challenging game that can give N+ a run for its gold bricks. In fact, You Want Cookie seems to take a lot of inspiration from N+, between the collecting of gold crumbs to the merciless barrages of missiles. You Want Cookie differentiates itself by playing from a top-down perspective, taking away N+'s acrobatics, but giving the player more of a free range of movement. You also have two special abilities that allow you to either sprint or become temporarily invisible, which are both certainly needed to get past some of the more trigger-happy obstacles. And once you complete the game's 100 levels, if you can complete them, there are a handful of multiplayer modes to tackle with a friend. The best of the multiplayer modes, Builder's Block, even puts one player in control of building the death trap levels, while the other players collect golden crumbs and try to stay alive. It's a fantastically done game that really deserves more recognition than it's likely to receive.
Eh?
Wait a second, this isn't an indie game. Yep, Gameloft has come to the Xbox Indie Marketplace with its previously PSN-only title, Tank Battles. Like most of Gameloft's games, it's a very polished imitation of an existing game, and in this case it's the classic Atari game Combat. It looks great, has dozens of arenas to fight in, and will certainly entertain you and your friends for a couple of rounds. But in the end, the gameplay is just as shallow as the other combat imitation games out there. 50 single-player missions try to add replay value, but the AI is either incredibly easy early on, or remarkably cheap in the later levels, with little in between. There's nothing really wrong with tank battles, but there's a good chance that you already have a much better multiplayer game on your 360 for deathmatch, team deathmatch, and capture the flag. Snake Eyes may look like a simple Zuma clone, but actually it has a fairly unique hook. Instead of firing marbles from a central location, you can select any marble along the path and launch it from there. For the most part, this works really well, and keeps the game feeling fresh even if you're a Zuma veteran. The downside of choosing where to shoot from is that the controls for doing so aren't particularly intuitive. Selecting which marble to use is harder than it should be, as you'll often miss the marble you meant to select. It was never so bad as to cause me to lose a round, but it was still a point of annoyance while playing.